Open worlds are a great way to spend your time. There's little else that I'd rather do than play Skyrim and wander around the expertly crafted world, even closing on 6 years after release. At the same time, though, I find playing Mass Effect Andromeda abhorrent and nausea-inducing after a mere 35 or so hours of play. So why is that? I love both series as well as open worlds, but one has taken my interest for over 1,000 hours, and the other couldn't even keep me playing through the entire storyline. Now, I'm well aware that some of what I'm gonna say is subjective, and some may enjoy Mass Effect Andromeda infinitely more than other open world games, Skyrim included. I still think these points that I'm about to bring up have value though, so see both sides and I encourage you to stick around. First off, let's talk about a single player experience, aka having fun all by your lonesome and not having other people in your life. I'm joking, of course, you probably have at least 3 friends, maybe, most likely, probably. I hope so. I don't. Single player games have it way more challenging than multiplayer focused games when creating an open world or even the game itself. Multiplayer is inherently going to have the advantage when it comes to fun right out of the gate because it allows you to play and experience the game with other people. Human interaction can make even the worst games tolerable because you can joke around with your friends. Hell, I'm sure many World of Warcraft players would agree that there's a huge amount of people that basically use the game as a social media website that allows you to do raids as well on the side. Because of this, multiplayer games can get away with being less attention-grabbing and immersive as players aren't looking for it as often, and they'll become easily distracted by others playing the game. Single-player games, on the other hand, have your attention from the get-go. They have the added challenge of trying to keep the player invested, interested, and having fun purely through the mechanics of the game. When making an open world game, that becomes a big hurdle to overcome, and it's why you don't see games on the level of Fallout or Skyrim, on a world immersion standpoint that is, get released very often, once every couple of years at best. And no, I'm not saying single player games have more effort put into them when they're being made, I'm just saying that they have effort and challenges in different spots compared to multiplayer games and vice versa. When a single player game can hold your attention for a long time, it's because the developer worked with the tools in the game to create a world around you that has enough variation that you can forget you're playing a video game and at some level in your brain travel to the world you're playing in. Skyrim, Oblivion, Dragon Age Origins, Mass Effect 2, and Pillars of Eternity, they're all examples of games that got me immersed in them due to the amount of effort put into things like world building and strong single-player level design philosophy. It's in this level design philosophy that games like Mass Effect Andromeda start to falter. Single-player games in the last couple years have started to incorporate what I like to call an open concept world. They create the layout of the map and then pack in as much player interactive elements as possible to create more objectives and gameplay for players to uncover. The problem, of course, being that cluttering a map with activatable objects only pads out the experience with noise instead of engaging content. So let's explain it like this. I worked at a radio station last year as a morning host. It was a nice gig at a small station with only 3 employees, and I enjoyed it for the most part. The company I worked for recently adopted an open concept approach for their new station, with ours being one of the first to utilize it. Open concept in this instance means everything is in one central location without walls separating rooms. So we had one large office that packed in everything in a radio station in the exact same room. That included our radio booth, where you talk on the radio, news desk, and sales area. This made the office look way more busy than normal for anyone who visited, but at a cost of having more distractions all the time because everyone was in the same place. And it's a similar problem with these open concept games as well. Mass Effect 2 was, for example, greater than the sum of its parts because it combined hub areas with strong level design in the questing sections. The game would cart you off to each mission that was designed specifically for that part of the game, which helped the player have consistent fun and made developers have to think about the level design. Mass Effect Andromeda, on the other hand, is this open concept radio station. Everything's put into the same general area, but with no thought as to why or where it's going. Everything might as well be just these little checkboxes on the chart that the player is supposed to go and hit a button at. And MMOs have been doing this for years, don't get me wrong. Quests largely consist of fetching 10 bear asses for someone, or going to location A, then location B, and backtracking back to A again. And in an MMO, there's nothing really wrong with that because the entire goal is to level your character with more XP so you can participate in more parts of the game or with other people. But what's the point in doing it in a single-player story-driven game like Mass Effect Andromeda? Other than filling up that useless bar of Andromeda viability, there really isn't one that benefits the single-player experience. This grinding gets in the way of proper level design, storytelling elements, and gates the game from those that want to experience what it has to offer, but don't want to waste time grinding packs of enemies in a single-player game, which I feel is understandable. In Mass Effect Andromeda, the open world isn't there for your benefit, it's there to convince you that the game has more to offer than it really does. And the best example of this that I've run across so far is on Eos, one of the first big areas that you visit. There's a point in the game where you return to the planet later on as more regions and areas in it open up to the player, and I was driving around and exploring these new areas when I came across this huge area infested with Kett and with multiple quests inside it. For a split second, I was super excited about exploring it. Then I drove down to it and I realized that this huge area was populated completely with dozens of the exact same weird sci-fi turbine model. Seriously, there was at least like 15 to 20 of these things. Each of them had nothing around it apart from a choice of 3 different enemies that were sitting around on their hands until the player got there. You couldn't go inside them, explore them, or really interact with them in any meaningful way. Everything about it looked like something I expected to find in an open-world Steam Greenlight submission, frankly, rather than a AAA single-player RPG experience. So I drove through the area, occasionally shooting at enemies, and I thought to myself, why the hell am I even doing this? What's the point other than getting XP so I can go and do another thing that requires more XP? And it was at this point that I realized that I didn't give a shit about the story or universe in Mass Effect Andromeda, in part because the levels, world, and design didn't give a shit about me. The maps exist solely to be conquered, not explored, not experienced. They're simply an obstacle that the player has to overcome so that they can go on to the next set of slightly higher level, but no more difficult obstacles. At least in a game like Skyrim, I felt like the world was somewhat alive, even in the smallest semblance. Mass Effect Andromeda, though, is like playing with a slightly melted-in-the-sun action figure. There's nothing there beyond doing a thing because you need to do it. It misses the wonder, it misses the exploration, and it couldn't hold my attention, and that's something that we've been seeing in plenty of open world games in the last few years, especially with this new direction that BioWare seems to be going in. I first noticed it in Dragon Age Inquisition, and now it's becoming even more prevalent in Mass Effect, and I gotta say, I'm not super impressed with it. But anyways, that's my rant on Mass Effect Andromeda's level design. Let me know what you think about it in the comments. If you disagree with me or if you have other examples that you want to bring up, by all means, give me the information from your brain. I'd love to hear about it. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to my channel. And if you want to support me, 2 different ways you can do that. Throw a tip on VidMe if you're watching over there, or you can support my Patreon. I am PattyJack, and I'll see you next time. Have a wonderful day.